All right, let's dive into the century-long journey of one of hockey's most legendary franchises, the Boston Bruins. We're talking about a story packed with superstars, gut-wrenching heartbreak, and a whole lot of grit. The Bruins aren't just another hockey team. They're really a cornerstone of American sports history. Think about it. They're the third oldest team in the entire NHL and the absolute oldest in the United States. Their story is basically woven right into the fabric of the league itself. So, how in the world does that happen? How does a team funded by a guy who ran grocery stores become this massive American sports institution? Well, the answer goes all the way back to 1924. And yeah, his day job would literally color the team's identity for the next 100 years. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the 1920s, and the NHL decides it's time to expand into the United States. And where do they go first? Boston. That makes the Bruins a true American original right from the get-go. And you've probably heard this term before, Original Six. The Bruins hold this special place as one of them. For a solid quarter century, these six teams, they were the NHL. They built the rivalries and the traditions that still feel so important today. Their start was really one of a kind. A grocery store tycoon named Charles Adams buys the team. His GM, Art Ross, picks the name Bruins because it sounds strong and cunning. And get this, the original brown and yellow colors, they were chosen to match the logo of Adams' grocery stores. Then, right out of the gate, they go and make history, winning the first ever NHL game played on U.S. ice.
So they hit the ground running, and it really didn't take long for this expansion team to become a powerhouse. They found their groove fast and started chasing championships, led by some of the game's very first superstars. And the very first of those superstars was this guy right here, Eddie Shore. We're talking about a defenseman with just legendary toughness and skill. He's the player that really put the Bruins on the map, leading them to their first Stanley Cup final in only their third season. And that kicked off a kind of mini dynasty before World War II. In 1929, goalie Tiny Thompson helped them grab their first cup. A decade later, another amazing goalie, Frank Mr. Zero Brimsek, led them to their second. And then in 41, the famous Kraut line, that's Schmidt, Bauer, and Dumart, they powered the team to a third title right before a lot of the guys left to go serve in the war. All right, now let's jump forward a few decades. After a pretty long dry spell, a brand new era started in Boston. And this was the one that would really forge the team's identity for generations to come. This was the era of the big, bad Bruins. Now, this identity wasn't just about being tough, though, believe me, they had plenty of that. It was this amazing mix of intimidating, physical hockey, and for the first time, a kind of offensive firepower from the defense that the league had just never seen before. And you absolutely cannot overstate the immediate impact of one single player. Before defenseman Bobby Orr showed up in 1966, the Bruins were not great. The season he joined, they made the playoffs. And that started a streak of 29 straight years in the postseason, a record in all major North American pro sports. He literally changed everything. But Orr wasn't alone. This whole era was just defined by a cast of absolute stars. You had Phil Esposito, who was just shattering scoring records, Jerry Cheevers, a legend in goal, Captain Johnny Busick, the leader, and then later, Coach Don Cherry and his Lunch Pail Athletic Club teams. They perfectly captured that tough, blue-collar, big, bad Bruins spirit. And all that talent? Oh yeah, it paid off. The Bruins finally ended a 29-year drought by winning the Stanley Cup in 1970, which was capped off by that iconic flying goal from Bobby Orr. They won it all again in 72, cementing this era as one of the greatest in hockey history. But this incredible era ended in absolute heartbreak. It's Game 7 against their biggest rivals, the Montreal Canadiens. Late in the game, the Bruins get called for having too many men on the ice. Montreal ties it on the power play and then wins in overtime. Just a devastating loss that even led to their coach, Don Cherry, getting fired. So after the big, bad Bruins, the team entered this new phase, one of incredible consistency, all led by a player who would become the face of the franchise for more than 2 decades. And that player was defenseman Ray Bourque. He was drafted in 1979, and for the next 21 seasons, he was the bedrock of this team, one of the greatest defensemen to ever live and truly the heart and soul of the Boston Bruins. And his leadership led to just relentless consistency. That playoff streak that started with Bobby Orr,
It just kept on going, all the way through the Bourque era, adding up to 29 straight years in the playoffs. They were always good, always in the hunt.
But for all that success, the big prize just stayed out of reach. They fought their way to the Stanley Cup final twice, in '88 and '90, but both times they ran into that Oilers dynasty. Then, that incredible playoff streak finally ended in 1997. And the era itself came to this really emotional end in 2000, when the Bruins traded an aging Bourque to Colorado just to give their beloved captain one last shot to finally win the cup. After the Bourque era, the Bruins had to rebuild. They had to find a new identity, but the 21st century would see them do just that, building a new core that would finally bring them back to the top of the hockey world. And the team's comeback was really built on these two leaders. The giant defenseman Zdeno Chara, who was immediately named captain when he signed, and he was joined by a young forward, Patrice Bergeron. Together, these two became the foundation of the next great Bruins team. And that foundation led to this moment. In 2011, after a brutal 7-game final against the Vancouver Canucks, the Bruins ended another long drought. 39 years. That's how long it had been. They were finally Stanley Cup champions again, bringing glory right back to Boston. And this modern team wasn't just a one-hit wonder. They stayed a powerhouse for more than a decade, and it all peaked in the 2022-23 season. That year, they put together the single greatest regular season in the history of the NHL. They shattered records for wins, for points, only to suffer a shocking first-round playoff exit. Just unbelievable. So when all is said and done, the Bruins have won 6 Stanley Cups. That 2011 victory really cemented their place in history, tying them for the second most championships of any American NHL team. But with cornerstones like Bergeron and Chara now gone, the Bruins are at another crossroads. After a full century of legendary players and unforgettable moments, the big question is, who's going to step up to write the next chapter in this incredible story?